Welcome to the Beverage Intake Explosion, an evolutionary mismatch proof of concept study. I'd like to acknowledge my co-author, Dr. Janice Miller, and thank the International Continence Society for this opportunity to present. I have no disclosures. The theoretical framework for this study is evolutionary medicine. Evolutionary medicine is the application of modern evolutionary theory to understanding, preventing, and treating disease, including an emphasis on the chronic diseases of modern society. When you take a look at our evolutionary history, for the vast majority of existence, Homo sapiens and their ancestors drank only water and breast milk until weaning. Wine, beer, and milk entered between 5000 and 2000 BCE, and we only added tea, coffee, and other common beverages over the recent 2000 years. Over the last century, the beverage industry has exploded, and our intake behavior, serving sizes, and attitudes about beverages have changed. Humans remain adaptive to relatively low requirements for water, with a lower water to dietary energy ratio. These adaptations also apply to breastfeeding mothers and breast milk composition. Going back to that recent slide, you can see that relative to the scope of evolutionary time, two things happened in recent close proximity. The first is the Industrial Revolution in 1793, and then just a little over 100 years later, the beginnings of the beverage explosion, which started in the last half century. And herein lies the evolutionary mismatch. While the Industrial Revolution pushed forward new marketing, and the resulting beverage explosion introduced a frenzy of marketing to a ripe audience, no one was thinking about what this explosion of beverages might be doing to people's bladders. I'll spare you my singing right now, but I'm sure many of you can recall this 1972 song and TV commercial. Social messaging informs us to drink before you are dehydrated and get your 64 ounces or more of water in each day. We carry water bottles around, visit coffee shops, and even drink our food instead of eat it. Our hypothesis is that the modern beverage explosion is an environmental mismatch with our paleolithic genome, body, and bladder. Modern beverage culture as one cause of higher frequency void, or overactive bladder. We speculated that women's bodies evolutionarily require only the simple drink-to-thirst response, whether breastfeeding or not, and that messages beyond drinking to thirst can tip women towards overactive bladder. The equilibrium in breastfeeding fluid dynamics predicts no difference in voiding frequency in relation to fluid intake when comparing breastfeeding and non-breastfeeding women, because the fluid intake balance, the input and the output, maintains physiological equilibrium. In a study of breastfeeding and non-breastfeeding women at 9 months postpartum, we tested the null hypothesis that societal messaging to drink beyond thirst, or drinking for two, results in a higher incidence of bladder symptoms than that observed in a cohort of non-breastfeeding postpartum women receiving today's already elevated societal beverage consumption messaging. The outcomes of this study were total beverage intake and number of bladder voids per day. This study is a secondary analysis of the Emerald study. The comparative groups at 9 months postpartum were 39 non-breastfeeding women and 52 breastfeeding women, with a main outcome measure of void frequency. The majority of the women were Caucasian, and the study site was Lower Southeast Michigan. Roughly 90% of the participants were college educated. In the results, the preventative treatment group of non-breastfeeding women shows significantly lower daily beverage intake, 60 ounces, than the breastfeeding group, 75.3 ounces, p equals 0.002. And there were significant lower average number of daily voids in the preventative treatment group of non-breastfeeding women, who have the baseline societal messaging only compared to the control group of breastfeeding women with a heightened societal messaging. This was 6.3 voids a day versus 7.2 voids a day, with p equals 0.04. Evolutionary theory and research support a small increase in fluid intake for breastfeeding women, which is sufficient to maintain the same hydration level and same number of daily voids as non-breastfeeding women. However, in this study, the condition of heightened societal messaging in breastfeeding mothers resulted in significantly higher total daily beverage volume intake and daily voids than the condition of status quo modern societal messaging. We speculate that the breastfeeding women responded to societal messaging to hyperhydrate for the purpose of breastfeeding, and fluid intake was above the evolutionary need for breastfeeding. So, breastfeeding women instead experienced increased urinary frequency, tipping towards an overactive bladder definition. To conclude, this natural experiment provides first evidence-based proof of concept for the argument that in terms of evolutionary perspective, the new cultural milieu of the beverage-focused society may be driving contemporaneous increase in voiding frequency, and that prevalence and progression of this chronic condition may lessen without conscious individual effort if restraint is imposed on societal and marketing messaging to drink regardless of thirst.